California franchise owners slashed 16% of working hours. Customers stopped coming. America's largest fast food chain watched profit margins collapse in the nation's biggest state. This isn't corporate greed. This is economic warfare. The math is brutal. California raised fast food minimum wage from $16 to $20 per hour in April 2024. 25% overnight increase in labor costs. For one industry, just one. No other sector was targeted. The law hits only restaurants with 60 or more nationwide locations, isolating chains from local establishments. This reveals the real target. It was never about wages. It was about destroying a specific business model. Franchise owners started cutting. Some reduced staff, others canceled expansions, several closed stores. But then something broke the political system. McDonald's, Subway, KFC franchise owners who never touched politics began organizing. They formed political action committees. They funded Democratic opponents. They targeted lawmakers who voted for the law. The business community entered total war against Sacramento. And that changes everything. Assembly Bill 1228 has a curious clause. Restaurants that bake and sell their own bread are exempt. Panera Bread fits perfectly. Its billionaire owner Greg Flynn donated heavily to Newsom for years. When Bloomberg exposed the connection, Newsom denied everything. Flynn said he'd pay $20 anyway. Too late. The political damage was done. The controversy exposed something rotten in California's system. Lawmakers passed a law affecting hundreds of thousands of workers and thousands of businesses. The SEIU union sat at the negotiating table. Corporations participated. Government mediated. But those who actually pay the bill, franchise owners, were excluded. This wasn't an accident. Franchise owners break the progressive narrative. They're small business operators, often women and people of color. They own assets but employ workers. They don't fit the boss versus employee boxes that organize California politics. Including them would complicate the story. Their absence allowed politicians to ignore economic reality. Results appeared within weeks. March 2024, 75% of franchises in the green. April, all in the red. 12 consecutive months of decline. Labor costs exploded. Prices rose. Customers fled. Owners cut hours and staff. Remaining employees became overloaded. Some stores automated everything, kiosks replacing cashiers, apps replacing delivery workers. The law that promised to help workers destroyed jobs. The Employment Policies Institute counted 16,000 layoffs in California's sector. Newsom disputed this with his own data showing growth. The dispute hides the real problem. The policy was implemented during consumer recession, food inflation, and supply chain crises. The wage increase amplified all these shocks. Political consequences exploded beyond restaurants. Newsom cannot run for re-election in 2026. The gubernatorial race became a vacuum, multiple Democrats below 15% in polls. McDonald's became a symbol of something bigger. California driving away business. Tech companies were already migrating to Texas and Florida. Manufacturing avoided new investments. The fast food law cemented the perception, progressive ideology over economic reality. Republicans hammered this message. It worked. Here's where the system truly breaks. The law created precedent for sectoral minimum wages. Healthcare, retail, hospitality all want the same treatment. Local governments in San Jose and Los Angeles already propose extra regulations. Job security, fixed schedules, expanded benefits. The original deal is dead. Total war between capital and labor. The Fast Food Council can raise wages every year until 2029, automatically. Based on inflation, franchise owners have no voice on the council. Their costs rise by decree, regardless of economic performance or market conditions. Other states watch California's experiment. New York, Washington, several others preparing similar laws. If it spreads, the entire fast food industry changes. Chains will face different wages per state. National strategies become impossible. Some operators will migrate to less regulated states. Competition between states intensifies. McDonald's exposed a fatal tension in California politics. The economy depends on innovation and regulation. Tech needs flexibility. Services need predictability. California treats sectors completely differently. Tech gets tax incentives, fast licenses, regulatory exemptions. Services face mandatory wages, schedule rules, constant audits. This reflects political power, not economic coherence. Tech lobby has muscle. Service sector doesn't. November 2025. 44% of voters with no gubernatorial preference. No candidate above 15%. Katie Porter, initial favorite, plummeted after media gaffes. Chad Bianco, Republican sheriff, became competitive in a Democratic state. The gubernatorial race reflects broader revolt. Voters pay more for housing, transportation, basic services, while businesses cut investments in jobs. Fast food became the trigger. Trump mentioned California at a McDonald's event, talking about laying siege on minimum wage. His comments nationalized the issue. California policies become federal ammunition. Newsom needs to defend these laws as progressive achievements for his presidential ambitions. Local pressure versus national positioning creates impossible tension, and this breaks the political balance. California leaders face a choice: continue regulation or adapt to economic realities. 2026 tests everything. Will voters prioritize ideology or pragmatism? Republicans advancing signals mood change. Democrats maintaining control but modifying approach indicates smart adaptation. Unchanged policies show progressive coalitions will ignore economic consequences. Franchise owners organize PACs targeting Democrats who voted for the law. They focus local elections where small money makes differences. Strategy: change legislative composition, not challenge governor directly. Success would prove private sector can mobilize against regulatory excess. McDonald's shows how technical policies generate massive political instability. Wage law to help workers created business opposition that could last years. Two scenarios dominate California's future. First, business resistance and electoral revolt force. Regulatory retreat, wages adjusted by region. Extended timelines. Leaders call it adjustments, not reversal. Second scenario, progressive coalitions maintain course despite costs. More regulations stacked on. Business opposition labeled as resistance to social progress. This route intensifies war between regulatory ideology and economic reality. Businesses migrate or automate. Long-term effects depend on California's capacity to generate high-value activity, compensating for jobs lost in regulated sectors. Recent data complicates the narrative. California added 2,300 fast food restaurants between first quarter 2024 and 2025. 5% growth above national average, and California historical expansion, despite high labor costs and operational challenges. Fast food demand remains strong enough to sustain growth. The contradiction between aggregate growth and individual suffering reveals policy evaluation complexity. General statistics mask brutal variation in specific outcomes. Some stores and operators adapted via higher prices, operational efficiency, or market repositioning. Others faced insurmountable costs and closed or shrank. Net effect appears positive in establishment counts, but aggregate data doesn't capture specific agony of franchise owners reporting negative impacts. Policy evaluation requires looking at systemic trends and distributional effects. Here, the system reveals itself completely. California's regulatory apparatus produces statistics confirming predetermined conclusions while ignoring contradictory evidence from those who pay the bill. McDonald's demonstrates how political processes satisfy zero stakeholders completely. Workers gained higher wages but lost hours and opportunities. Owners kept businesses but saw profitability and certainty plummet. Government achieved policy objectives but created permanent opposition. Consumers pay more for the same. The deal that enabled legislation fragmented into total war. How these tensions resolve will influence regulation in other states and sectors. If California's experiment improves worker conditions without severe economic disruption, similar policies will spread nationally. If implementation challenges prove insurmountable, other jurisdictions will avoid sectoral minimum wages in favor of alternative approaches to worker compensation. The California case becomes progressive model or regulatory excess warning. The outcome depends on political system's capacity to balance competing interests better than the process that produced Assembly Bill 1228. McDonald's in California represents more than disputes over wages or regulation. It reflects fundamental questions about how democracies balance economic efficiency and social objectives. The answers will shape policy debates for years. Coming months, watch changes in franchise ownership patterns. Monitor whether new openings continue at current pace. See how other states respond to California's experience. Follow the 2026 race and whether business concerns influence electoral behavior. McDonald's controversy may leave headlines. Its implications will continue shaping California's political and economic landscape. The precedent was established. The consequences are still exploding.